Hi, my name is Nina Löfberg and I'm a researcher at the Service Research Center at Karlstad University. I wrote my dissertation about services in manufacturing firms, and today I'm going to tell you about the challenges that I and also other researchers have identified as manufacturing firms want to increase their service business, or the service orientation as I choose to call it. Previous research has argued that creating a service culture is an important challenge to overcome in order to create a service business. I would like to agree with that, because I think that not having the service culture in place could lead to a number of challenges. First, there are managerial challenges, which means that managers might not know what activities to perform or don't have the organizational arrangements in place. They might miss the capabilities and skills needed for services, and it could also be that the roles are unclear in the company. In a company that I studied, for example, the production manager was also responsible for marketing of some services, which of course requires different competencies and skills. Another challenge is resistance from the sales force. The salespeople might not be very excited about selling a cheaper service when they are used to selling expensive goods, which of course also implies that they won't promote the service that much. Sometimes they don't even see the benefits for the customer because they are product-oriented. This also means that in some manufacturing companies, service selling opportunities are missed because the services are developed by service-oriented employees and the communication is then taken over by product-oriented employees. The next challenge is having goals but no strategies for increasing the service orientation. Although a firm might have a goal saying that 50% of the turnover should come from services in, let's say, 5 years, they might not have the competencies, resources, or operational activities and processes needed to achieve that. There is also a challenge of innovating new services, and especially in doing it continuously. First of all, funding new service development projects might be a challenge in a product-oriented company, where managers are used to invest in hardware and physical products, and the outcome of a service investment is more uncertain. Also, in manufacturing companies, often new service development seems to just happen. There is no organizational development process for services, although this has been identified in previous research as important. It is common that manufacturing firms adapt the product development process to services, however they seldom use it. Furthermore, there's a challenge in launching new services. Despite technological advantages, the customers might not be convinced of the benefits of the new services, and why should they buy it when they have managed without it before? This leads to yet another challenge, namely the customer resistance. Except for not seeing the benefits of a service, customer resistance was, for example, particularly evident in my studies, where the companies wanted to replace personal contact with technological solutions. There is also a challenge related to the firm's role in the value network. For example, some companies want to offer services to end customers, but they don't have access to them, or they can't access them without competing with their own customers. Last but not least is the challenge of finding a profitable business models for service. Many manufacturing firms are used to giving away services for free in order to sell the products or because the customers demands it. In my studies, for example, there were powerful OEMs that really demanded the services to even order the physical products from the company, so the supplier didn't really have a choice. So, what do manufacturing firms do to deal with all these challenges? In my dissertation, I identified a number of service maneuvers that the companies used. First, following a product orientation, some manufacturing firms added tangible attributes to their services. Could be, for example, a web page or a report, a physical evidence that could be shown to the customer. By doing so, they dealt with a reluctant customer as well as a reluctant sales force. Other firms worked with long-term service agreements. By doing so, they could focus on preventive maintenance rather than reaction to breakdowns. And by doing so, they tried to create a profitable business models for service. Another service maneuver was the separation of goods and services. This could mean that they created a separate service division, but it also meant that some firms separated the service offering from the goods offering. For example, in a small company that was a supplier to the automotive industry, they started to charge for service separately. First, they offered a development service, and then the customer was free to buy the physical products from them or from someone else. By starting to charging for the services, they created a service culture in the company, which meant that the employees' competencies and skills were valued. And it was also easier to charge for services. This was possible through the creation of partnerships. By partnering with a service company, the manufacturing companies could offer a better service than they could have done alone. And by doing so, they could also justify the payment for the customers, since someone else was involved in the service delivery. To address the challenge related to the rule in the value network, which meant that they didn't have access to the end customers, some companies that I studied actually had bought retailers in order to get access to the end customers and to get control over the entire supply chain. Finally, by increasing the focus on the customer and the problems they have, the companies could address the challenge of continuous service innovation. Traditionally, the companies that I studied had focused on the technological expertise in order to develop new services. But as they focused on the customers and their problems and how to solve them, the new services that I offered were actually demanded as they were launched. So to conclude, there are several challenges related to an increased service orientation in manufacturing firms. But as I had told you, there is also a lot of service maneuvers to deal with these challenges. I believe that there is one fundamental service maneuvers that is more important than the others, and that is to change the mindset of the employees from product orientation to service orientation.